Okay, so I'm going to just make this review quick and dirty because I have to go to work soon, and for some reason Hulu does not give me the Orville until Friday mornings, and everyone else gets to see it Thursday nights, and I'm super duper jealous but too cheap for cable, so this is my life. And yes, I know it's a first world problem, good lord. So I watched season 1, episode 8 of the Orville, Into the Fold, and honestly I would say this is one of my favorite episodes so far, definitely in my top 3. I absolutely loved this episode. First of all, I think it finally managed the tone problem. Finally. There were a few jokes here and there were moments where the show poked fun at itself or at sci-fi tropes, but each of those jokes felt appropriate for the scene it was in and felt timely and funny, and then the episode would maintain a serious tone when it needed to. This is what we need from the Orville if this is going to be a long-term show, and I think they're finally getting the kinks out and figuring out exactly what ratio of parody to sincerity to have, and all in all I thought this episode was fantastic at doing that. Also, this episode is great because it finally focuses on Dr. Finn and Isaac, two of the bridge characters or main characters who we haven't really seen very much development for. We've seen a little bit of Dr. Finn here and there in a couple episodes, and we've seen just dabbles of Isaac here and there. Isaac at this point had felt, or up to this point had felt kind of like a discount Data. He wasn't really very characterized, he was mostly just a snobby artificial life form, and his jokes were kind of funny, but beyond that I wasn't a giant fan of his character. This episode honestly developed his character for me just leaps and bounds, seeing him interact with the children and then carry those interactions over to how he interacted with the doctor at the end of the episode versus how he talked to her in the start of the episode was amazing. The character shift was just kind of night and day in certain aspects, and I thought that that was super important for making us finally connect with this character. Like, his costume's cheesy. He looks like the poor man's Cyberman from Doctor Who, and I'm talking early Doctor Who here. He's very cheesy looking, and yet this flat face with two glowing eye holes communicated so many feelings for me in some of these scenes. Like when he reaches out and holds her hand after holding the child's hand earlier in the episode. It was just a moment for me that gave me a lot of feelings and just made me go, aww. It was just pure. And his interactions with the children were really funny. When they were separated, the doctor is being held prisoner by an alien and they are exploring this planet trying to find some resources to turn on a distress signal for their shuttle. Oh, I should probably tell you how they got to that point. They flew through some kind of this show's equivalent of a wormhole and then crash land on a moon of a nearby planet because of some structural damage to the shuttle. And then they get separated and the doctor's held prisoner and they go looking for resources. And so there's a lot of interaction with the children, and there's a great scene where the kids ask how Isaac knows that their mom could be alive, and Isaac simply says, there was no sign of blood or severed limbs at the shuttle. And the delivery is just so great on that line. I thought there were all these like little jokes that I really enjoyed, but again, the tone was kept very, very in check for the most part. I think for the first time on this show, they really figured out how to manage that tone problem. But I loved seeing more of Dr. Finn, especially. She's also been kind of an underdeveloped character where we know she's cool, but we don't really see her do all that much. This episode, we finally get to see her just on her own in a situation, having to fight her way out, and I think it was really powerful. And there was this amazing scene where they have Isaac narrating Peter Rabbit in her voice, and she is escaping, or trying to escape out the window of her captor's home, and it's talking about not getting into mischief and the father being baked into a pie and all of that while she's trying to escape, and it builds this wonderful tension of, oh no, is she going to be caught? Is she going to be baked into a pie? What equivalent thing is about to happen? This episode was just artful in some areas in its delivery of what is otherwise a pretty cliche, very old Star Trek type plot where you crash land and you're stuck with children. But I feel like they recycled this plot in a way that made things new and that advanced the overall narrative of the series in just a very, very meaningful way. I will probably rewatch this episode this evening because I enjoyed every minute of this episode. I was always wondering what's going to happen next, and I felt like they had a lot of little bits that really continued to build up the ethos of the series, like when she tells her son to keep the... It's totally a phaser. To keep the phaser, let's be real, to keep the phaser on stun, because we value life. And I liked that. I liked that they keep bringing back these connections of, well, we're better in this way than humanity now. We care about the life of our enemies. We care about everyone's life. And I think that's good in echoing kind of the sentiment they had in Krill when they saved the children. I think that this show is Seth MacFarlane at his absolute best. Honestly, I had no idea to expect this kind of quality from this show, and before I watched any episodes, I was not excited about this show. I didn't think I'd like it. I thought that it'd be another Seth MacFarlane circle jerk where he produces and stars and just kind of mucks about, and I was not excited. But seeing this episode, seeing these characters, and seeing that Seth MacFarlane knows when he's needed and how much in an episode is really good. He was barely in this episode. This episode was all about Dr. Finn and Isaac and their story. And so I thought that they did a really good job of just having him present in the necessary scenes to plan a rescue. And there was this one great throwaway joke, though, where they did a damage report when they went through the rift or whatever, and the security chief reports that one of the ensigns spilled soy sauce on his pants, and he's like, they put that in a damage report? Oh, we need better people. Like, there are just these little moments where they do a good job of bringing that parody and a little bit of humor, but they don't take it too far anymore to the point where I'm losing all my suspension of disbelief. I think this show is finally starting to get its footing, and I am so excited to see where it goes from here, because the episodes I've seen so far, I've thoroughly enjoyed all of them. I've enjoyed the jokes, I've enjoyed the more serious tones, and I love that it all just looks like Star Trek. That theme song is so much more Star Trek than Discovery's theme, with just like ship porn flying through planets. Come on, it's great. Honestly, I know that I've made a bunch of super positive reviews about the Orville already, and this is just beating a dead horse, but I don't care. I loved this episode. I highly recommend this show if you still haven't checked it out, because it's so good. That is everything I have for you on this, though. I have to get to work. Auf Wiedersehen.